screen, you will now note that this interview is live, and I am with Andy Lin, who is, I believe, situated in the fair city of Los Angeles. Am I correct, Andy?
Yes, that's correct. I'm in the county of Los Angeles, and I actually work in a small city called Downey, which is a little southeast of downtown Los Angeles.
Yes, it's a part of a huge amalgam of cities and suburbs and all sorts of different places across the United States that I'm yet to visit. So
Well,
I hope one day to get to Los Angeles. Yeah. Andy, thank you for joining me for what will be the very last of a series of glass interviews that I initiated with the assistance of Cecilia Abadai, who has afforded me a great number of connections, and in doing so, we believe we have connected a great number of conversations together, which could potentially shift the way that we do things in a human sense. So I've got a series of questions I'd like to ask you. And the first being that, Andy, it seems to me from the feedback that I've had over a number of months from watching your work and hearing from other people that you're incredibly respected across the whole of the glass family. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's I think it all started through my joining Google Plus and interacting with fellow glass explorers. Because I actually haven't met another glass explorer in person, unfortunately. But it's through all my interaction on Google Plus and just sharing my story about what I am doing with Google Glass and how it can potentially benefit people with disabilities. And I guess it strikes a chord with people because they haven't really thought too much about how such wearable tech could be applied to people with disabilities. So I think that's mainly the reason. Maybe it's the uniqueness or just the human element that hasn't been explored too much. And I think that's why people have this impression of me. Whether it's warranted or not, I don't know. So
it's well warranted, Andy, because what you're doing is visualizing people who are human and who are incredibly talented and who are people that are close to you, and you are pictured with them, and you are pictured as equal to everyone, and that, I think that's a very powerful thing. So all power to you and your strong work. Andy,
thank you.
What does accessibility have to do with glass?
Well, unfortunately, glass is not in its natural state an accessible device, meaning that for someone with a physical disability or some other type of disability, in order to use it, they would have to be able to use the touchpad that is on the right side of the frame. And for many people with physical disabilities, they can't access the touchpad. They may be able to use their hands, but they can't move it to the top. Or with some people with cognitive issues or with like a spinal cord injury, they may have ataxia where they can move their hand grossly, but they can't have the fine motor movement to access the touchpad. So that's the main kind of barrier. There's also the voice input. For some people with like cerebral palsy, they may have a voice which may be understood by their family members or caretakers, caregivers, but for a speech input device, it's unintelligible. It's hard for the computer to understand. So that's what kind of accessibility is in relation to glass.
And the challenges that the Glass project has in addressing those mandates that are around accessibility for people who have cognitive and physical impairment. an empowerment too in certain circumstances.
Right.
Andy, I'm sure that you're well aware of who Thad Starner is, but I'm wondering whether you know where the GLASS project originated from and how it has got a inextricable tie to that of accessibility and people with physical and cognitive impairment.
Well, since its inception, since GLASS was introduced, unfortunately there hasn't been much in terms of progress made in accessibility, and I don't think it's an issue that much because they want to first bring it to the consumer first, the able-bodied consumer. Just like when Android was introduced by Google, they didn't incorporate many accessibility features. Same with iOS, with the iPhone. It didn't come with any accessibility features. So I think when they introduced the GLASS Explorer program, they just were trying to think of different ways to how it could be used, and that's why it hasn't been officially launched yet. And I think accessibility came in when they released a video in August 2013 with a lady, a law student at NYU, Alex, who was using GLASS, and it showed some potential for its use, but it didn't really address any of the issues, which still haven't been met. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
It does partially, yeah. There's a historical narrative for GLASS that goes back at least 20 years, and it's interesting to note, Andy, that even now, 2 decades on, that these accessibility challenges are still very much at the fore of development, and I'm sure that you would agree with me that they need to be critically addressed. They need to be also acknowledged as being a very important backbone to the way that these technologies need to progress forward in time, not simply as a consumer-based product for people that are entirely able-bodied, but encompassing everybody that has the ability to interact with the device itself. So just as a segue, is there any other projects or things that you've been involved in, Andy, that GLASS sponsored that address these key challenges? I'll put them as challenges, not issues. These key challenges that you have just alluded to.
Well, I'm not officially working with Google per se, but I'm working with fellow developers that have also similar interests. There's a fellow GLASS Explorer, Mike Giovanni, and he actually works for a company, Isobar, and he was the one that introduced Winky, which allowed for the wink to take a picture with GLASS. And he followed that up a few months ago with an app called Tilt Control, which I have featured in one of my videos. And this allows someone to use head movement to advance the timeline and to wink, to select, to mimic the select with a touch side tap there. So, and through that first interaction, I've been in talks with some of the management at Isobar, and we're working together now to bring some of these features and try them out with patients at the place where I work. And specifically, we're working to develop an accessible house. We have a model home that we have here at Rancho that has some technologies that are for people with disabilities to use around the house. So what we're doing is trying to update some of the technologies so that a person can use glass to automate some of the things in the house, using tilt control, using the Mayo, also to see if these technologies can be used with people with disabilities at Rancho. And so that's something that's coming up in the pipeline within the next month. We have some partners through several home automation companies to develop this pilot project. So that's one of the exciting things that we're working on. But I haven't really had any official interaction with Google, unfortunately. I have reached out in different ways to Google, but I guess it's just difficult to reach someone that may have similar interests. So that's where I'm at now. I'm always scouring Google Plus for people that are working on similar projects. There's a guy at Yahoo that has developed a way to use hand gestures to activate glass, the timeline, so I've been in touch with him as well. And for myself, I'm looking at also hardware solutions using like a joystick from a wheelchair to operate glass, which I've been able to do, and also using switches. Many people with different physical disabilities can use a switch, so using the switch, they can use glass as well instead of having to use their hands.
And it always amazes me how innovative people become when they need to address a cognitive and physical impairment in certain ways. I'm involved in a project with Andy Cropper, who is a Getty photographer and avid thinker, inventor, who is looking at the Alzheimer's community and how glass can provide a recall function so that it can, in certain ways, provide a daily narrative of things to rewire the brain in certain ways. That's one project. Andy, I'm wondering whether you're aware of or whether you're prepared to create a glass community that addresses these challenges that you've talked about, that we can work together on through G+, because I see that G+ communities as being a very powerful mechanism to draw together findings, ideas, thoughts, prospects, projects, and so on.
Yeah, that definitely is something that I've thought about, and actually a few people have asked me to start. I just haven't had a chance to do it, but definitely that's something that I want to start. So yeah,
good.
That'd be great.
Well, let's do that together. I'd like to be involved with that. And the reason I create these positive possibilities is that in a very powerful way, I was approached by two young women at the Glass Meetups event in the University of Canberra recently. And one of those women is an Indigenous Aboriginal Australian, and that after some intensive negotiation and discussion with her community in a national context, that individual has stepped forward and said that she wishes to explore what glass will mean in the context of Indigenous nations, not only in Australia, but in an international context. And I find that an incredibly powerful thing for an individual to step forward into the unknown, particularly that there is a great deal of fear and trepidation around this technology for Indigenous nations. It's been expressed that way, and understandably people have been quite reserved. So I'm part of that Deadly Glass group and team, and again, I find that
following that the past few days, and excited to be a part of that community.
Good. So, Andy, that's an amazing thing to occur halfway through an interview that we've declared that we will embark on what will be a coalescing of information, and I think a very powerful union and a message back into the Google framework as to what
Right.
power exists already and what they should be looking at. Can you tell us a little bit about, Andy, the Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center for me, and for others that don't know what it is?
Rancho Los Amigos National Rehab Center is a medical facility primarily for people with physical disabilities. It's actually been around in one form or another for about over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
It started as a poor farm for people that didn't have work and needed a place to stay and eat. And Rancho transformed itself into a rehab facility during the polio epidemic. People came from all over the country to be at Rancho to be taken care of with polio, with what they called iron lungs. This was before ventilators were introduced. Iron lungs were these huge kind of canisters that people were in that helped them to breathe. So since that time, Rancho has really been in the forefront of rehabilitation. It's where the halo was introduced, invented, which stabilizes the head during a neck injury. And it's just been a pioneer of different research in gait analysis and all sorts of rehab engineering. The place specifically that I work for, the department, is called the Center for Applied Rehab Technology, and it's been here 25 years. I've been here 15 years, and we specifically look at how technology can be applied for people with disabilities, from mobility to computer access to communication to environmental control. And so it's kind of the therapists all here specialize in this kind of technology, and we can work as a team to bring together good recommendations for people with disabilities.
Very powerful, very powerful. Andy, the journey forward for you will involve glass in what way?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The journey in life forward from now for you is going to involve glass in what way? Is it going to be that of a tool that you apply to assist others? Will it be a way that you connect with other people in a social context, or is it going to be a whole range of things you don't really know about yet?
I believe it's all of the above and more that I can't fathom yet. It's when I first received glass, which was in December, just right before Christmas. I really didn't know what to expect, and it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I had wanted glass since early when it was first introduced, but never got the invite. So apparently they opened up a lot of more invites later that in 2013. So I just applied on a whim and was accepted. So I decided to do it. I felt that perhaps this technology could be used for our patients, and but I really had no idea of what I would use it for, how, and if people could use it with disabilities. And I feel that this is just the beginning. I mean, this is just one particular device that's going to be coming in terms of wearable technology. And this is a good starting point because it's a mainstream device supported by a large company, Google. And it's whether or not it's successful. Still, it's something that people will look as a kind of a starting point for this technology. So I think really it's just the beginning of the journey. It's the first step of this long journey, and for now it's for me, I just get the satisfaction of seeing day-to-day people that I work with kind of light up and smile, and just with disabilities, and they put it on and they say, "What is this device?" And I'm saying, "This is Google Glass." And for many of them, they have no idea what it is, and they just, when the screen pops on, they're like, "Wow, I want one." They say, you know, and their families all just say, "Wow, this is great. Can we buy it?" It doesn't matter the cost. We want to buy it. And I'm just saying, well, just hold on. This is really exciting technology, but it's really in its infancy. So I think with it's just a starting point, and I'm excited for all the potential that it has.
That's right. Andy, we started this interview just over 25 minutes ago, and 18 minutes ago I received this message on my phone. And I'll read it to you. You can see,
Okay.
you can see this individual on the screen there. The message says, this is from Stephen Hurd. "I've just had a demonstration of Google Glass, an application which identifies objects for people who are blind like myself. It's fantastic. It's going to have some other great applications, and I congratulate the people at B2 Cloud, Josh Guest and his team, who are doing a great job." So here is a person who's completely blind, who's just completely changed his perception as to what's around him, because it can recognize things for him and provide information and contextually allow him to interact. And that's happening right at this very moment.
Yeah, it's exciting, and also with Project Tango, the 3D phone. You know, I applied when I first saw it because I immediately saw the potential, and that's going to change a lot as well, because it's in 3D, and looking at people with that are blind as well. You could give spatial environmental data, and so I mean, it's just amazing what this technology can do.
And in 4 short months,
go
ahead.
I remember when GPS units first came out for people were blind, and that was really something that was really powerful. Since I've been in the field, there's been just so much that has changed for people with blindness, in terms of smart canes, GPS units that can give feedback of where a person is. So it's really exciting to see that.
It is, Andy. In 4 short months of interviews, at the beginning of the interviews, I predicted that Tango would have some convergence with Glass, and it's happening in a way which will be very powerful. And some people, though, are very concerned about the nature of a device worn that's ambient, that walks through private spaces, and that tracks and traces and rebuilds, essentially maps, a 3-dimensional interpretation of an event, of an interior space that's not currently mapped. So I have a question here that's around that, and it's around what the term privacy might mean to you, and how important that term privacy of the personal data of the people you work with, patients, in a sovereign sense. Can you give us a bit of an idea as to your thoughts on that?
Well, that's kind of the one of the sticking points of Google Glass, and in terms of privacy, whether it's warranted or not. For when I use Glass in the hospital, I'm very aware of people's privacies, patient privacy, because of just laws regarding that. So I don't wear it when I'm in inpatient or outpatient. I wear it with a client one-on-one, and I think that this privacy issue is just gonna be something that people have to understand, is just something that we really don't have privacy. We say that we respect privacy, but we post things on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. You know, privacy is kind of a misnomer in our day and age when someone can just easily pull up like a public record of you online. So with Google Glass, it's more of a visual thing. I mean, we can easily take a picture with a camera phone, and people don't seem to have a problem with that. But with Glass, since it's in the forefront of someone's face, people think it's literally in their face. It's like sticking out to them, and it's something that people just don't know what to think. It's just there, and I think there was an article today by Astro Teller that talked about he works for Google, and just saying, well, that's part of the problem with Glass is it's just so new. It's kind of deemed to fail because it's just something people aren't used to. And the camera, whether or not the camera makes a difference, if the camera wasn't there, would people have the same impression? And I would think that some people would still have the same impression because it's just so new, and it's just so weird looking.
Andy, we're going to be able to tangle on that point going forward in time a lot, which is good.
Right.
We'll be able to explore that in the notions that a lot of people believe that we live in a post-privacy era, that it's not privacy per se that we need to be coining or looking at. We should be really thinking about transparency. That as Eric Schmidt and others have attested many times, much to the chagrin of people like Noam Chomsky, that if you've got nothing to fear, then why not just give us all of your data anyway? Because we'll protect you, and we do no evil is our mantra. So let's not dwell on that point. I'm interested to know also that this morning as I drove to work, I listened with horror at some of the recounts of what's happening and unfolding at the moment in the Ukraine, where a civil war is essentially killing hundreds of people by the day. You know, terrible what's unfolding. What does it mean to you to know that Glass is an amalgam of technologies that have come primarily out of a military context?
Out of the military context?
They've been developed in a military and been deployed and used in other iterations of this device in a military context first.
Well, there's been so many things that have been developed by the military that have made it into public use. I think the military is a real think tank of what technology can do. For instance, one of the projects that we're working on at Rancho involves brain interface with computer.
Yes.
I actually can't talk too much about it.
No, I understand. You'll be under NDAs and all the rest of it. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, for something like that, obviously, the government, specifically the government has specific interest in such technology. But things specifically for people with disabilities, one of the things that we use commonly here with patients is head tracking devices. And head tracking devices were kind of developed by the military for use with fighter pilots. And that technology now is just so common for people with disabilities that they can use their head movement to operate a mouse on a computer. And so I think people may have issues with how technology is first developed, but many things can be applied for the benefit of people in general. So I don't think there should be too much issue with that.
No. And as long as we're in a space where we're adequately informed as to how these things can benefit humankind, we are always under the understanding, I'm sure you would agree, that I draw the analogy, I might as well draw it again, is that a pen can write on paper, but it can also be wielded and used as a weapon. So it depends on how we would use this particular device, being glass, in a way that is for the betterment of humankind and not the opposite. So, and Chris Kitchen, in actual fact, has contributed a very short. I've not interviewed Chris, but I'm acknowledging Chris's work in saying that he believes that the current iteration of glass, and you might concur with this, is no more than the Coke bottle thrown out of the airplane into the desert. People are still trying to. Gods must be crazy. People are still trying to work out what to do with it in a way that's meaningful and doesn't hurt people, and and I think that's a very powerful way of looking at it. Andy, given that you're busy and that people are watching this through time and are very curious as to where you're heading, what do you think that glass might mean for people in say my geographical part of the world, Australasia? Are we likely to see the same things that unfolded in the last year across the states with glass? I mean, we've seen multiple assaults, we've seen lots and lots of cyberbullying and vilification and social separatism and a lot of fear, but also some brilliant things happening as well. So is that likely to happen here as well?
Well, from the stories that I hear from different glass explorers that have traveled through Europe, through Australasia, they really haven't had any really negative experiences with people that have seen them wear glass, whether it be in like Japan or in Europe, in like Paris, or even Australia. I've read some accounts of people just really kind of in awe of the technology. They maybe read about it. I think people in America may be a bit so fearful of their privacy with the NSA, with all that's going on, and I don't know, maybe it takes different cultures that are more accepting, more able to incorporate these technologies. But you never know. It's so new, and it's so different than what anyone has ever seen. So, but I think a lot of the hate that has come has specifically come from, I hate to say it, but like the Bay Area up north, where people associate glass with Google, and people just, some people over there just despise Google for what they call the gentrification of the city of there, and it's really sad to see. But in terms of when I've been in LA just wearing glass, I've never had a negative reaction. And for maybe 90% of the people that wear glass, maybe 95% in the U.S., it's nothing that people are really fearing. It seems like these isolated cases with like Sarah Slocum and with the reporter up north who was assaulted. It's these stories that come out that really make the headlines, and we'll see how other countries respond. In terms of Japan, I have many visitors from Japan that visit Rancho, and they really don't see how glass could be introduced in Japan. because over there are really tight privacy laws. And for one thing, with camera phones, they require that the click always be activated, so people know that the click is someone's taking a picture.
Yes.
But they see, but even with this, times have shown that people are just amazed by the technology, and they're hopeful that this technology can be introduced in Japan because they see the potential. So we'll definitely see. It's something that people are going to have to deal with if Google decides to launch it in other countries. Well, we'll see.
I think that's an inevitable happening, and the reason I say so is based on one very, very small fact, and that is that, as you've expressed for the last half an hour, the device itself is a very useful device. And in usefulness, the coalescing of people's political will always outruns that of privacy, always. Recently, I've returned from a briefing with Prime Minister and Cabinet in Australia, and in the thematic clusters of information that we are looking at is around evolving channels of communication, managing tensions between individual and collective objectives, leveraging resources for better solutions, and competing for influence. So essentially, in summary, when I took Glass into a room with 80 senior ministerial people, at least half of the room were horrified with the fact that for the last year this has been happening in America and has been useful. And the other half of the room were incredibly enamoured and said, when can we have this come on board? When can we use this? Which brings me to my very last question, and one that I hope can and will take us across into this new community that we can create together. Where are we heading next? And Andy, do you think that we've been cyborgs since the smartphone was invented, or is Google Glass going to shape and change humanity?
Is Google Glass going to change humanity?
Well, digital glass. Let's take the
right. I think wearable tech, is gonna not specifically Google Glass, but wearable tech is going to change how technology is developed for the consumer. It's really how to integrate wearable tech so that it's easy to access, and that's one of the main features of Glass, is that it's right there. You don't even have to pull out your phone. That's really a good question. It's when the iPhone was introduced, that really changed everything for technology. Once the iPhone came out, the old flip phones became obsolete, and that radically changed design of the phone. However, Glass is just a kind of a new way of thinking that is beyond how a cell phone works. If this when this technology can be developed that it's not noticeable, whether it be through the smart contacts, whether it be through neural processing of some sort, then that's going to really change. I think this is, as I mentioned, just the start. As these technologies become less noticeable, at that point, that's going to change everything about privacy, because you won't even know that someone is recording you if they have a contact lens, if they have sensors that are all embedded on their body, if they have like radio transmission that's implanted or something like that, GPS that could track someone that you're watching. So that's, I think, right now it's not going to change things radically, but maybe in 5 years we're going to see how this was the beginning. This was the beginning of a revolution of how technology is going to be designed. Maybe revolution is kind of a strong word. Maybe I don't know, something else that.
Maybe we can drop the R and just call it evolution.
Evolution. Okay.
Yeah.
And one other thing, the previous question, it brought to. I'm sorry to interrupt. It brought to my mind after you asked it. The next generation, like I have 2 kids, when they see glass, they haven't, you know, they don't think of anything of it. And I think the next generation, such wearable tech is going to be so common that kind of the old generation will think, how do these kids even survive these days? You know, in 20 years or so. You know, and I think really what's going to happen is going to involve our kids. Like you have 4 kids, I believe.
Yes, I do.
You know, and they're going to shape how people's impression of technology is going to be, and they're going to design it. So we'll see what happens.
That's right. I put a beautiful photo of both my daughters hovering over my O2 XDA PDA, reconfiguring how it worked beyond what I could think even at that time. And that was when they were 7 and 9. So, and I'm watching my 4-year-old at the moment who has incredible navigational power through a number of programs that just astounding. That I've never taught him anything how to do it, but it's been designed so, and he's building virtual environments for all sorts of reasons. But Andy, we don't need to talk about implantables and that side around consilience and any of that, because you're in there and doing that. It's part of your everyday and part of my everyday. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to connect with you. Thank you for your patience. I'm very glad that you've recovered from all sorts of things, and that we are
Thank you.
on a new journey of discussion, which I would like to continue with a GPUS community that looks at accessibility and the challenges that are facing glass within, not only within a social acceptance context, but very much around how these challenges can be designed for and designed in and encompassed with people who are physically and cognitively impaired. So thank you very much for joining me.
I really enjoyed this hangout, and I'm honored to be the last part of this series. And thank you, and look forward to collaboration with you and others that share the same interests.
Thank you.